Forbes India Leadership Awards 2026 Leadership Circuit, presented by Federal Bank.
Entrepreneurship today is being reshaped by technology, changing consumer expectations, global uncertainty, and now models of growth. Yet, the principles that build enduring enterprises, purpose, values, resilience, and sound judgment remain constant. The hero story, from its roots in Ludhiana to global two-wheeler leadership, is one of North India's most defining journeys of enterprise and reinvention. To share his perspective on navigating change while building for the long term, please give a warm welcome to Sunil Kant Munjal, Chairman, Hero Enterprises.
It may be more useful if I ask you, all of you in the audience, what is concerning you right now? What is bothering you? What seems to be the issue or the challenge that you believe needs an answer? I'm quite okay with whatever you pick as a subject, and we can go across multiple subjects too. I'm okay with that. So anyone has a, yep.
My question to you is that over the years, has the adjective jugaad starting to hurt India? Though there are some very senior professors who gave us this book called as Jugaad, but is it coming back to bite us now?
All right. Anyone else?
Mr. Munjal, we've long been a services economy, but now we need to focus on manufacturing. How do we do that?
All right. Yes, please.
So he mentioned that there are multiple institutions of eminence of education and research that are there. So since you are one of the leaders of the industry and you had the chance to work with different ministries, departments, etc. So how do we get them to build that connective tissue? Because as an industry, particularly if we look at pharma and life sciences, which are going to be the next big thing coming out of India, moving beyond the generic story. So how do we get the government to understand the challenges of the industry despite multiple representations being made at multiple levels? The needle does not move. So from your experience, how would you help the industries or the players working in this sector make the government understand that what is required and what actually can be done?
Right. Okay.
Sir, how do we make good education affordable for most of the people? As earlier in the earlier panel, we were praising Plakshas and IITs, but most of them are out of range for normal people. So how do we do that?
Good question. Yeah.
We are struggling with self-governance as, I wouldn't just say nation, but as a society in general, as a species. And that is causing, integrity and honesty is a subset of that. So, and it sort of, flows in every field, whether it's about, protecting data privacy in healthcare, whether it's about...
What's the question?
That we have, what should we do as people?
I've got it. Next, please. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mr. Sunil. How are you? My question is that if today you were building a consumer brand, how would you build it using AI? What would change in that manner?
The word startup has become almost fashionable right now. Of course, there is a need for it, by the way, and I'm not running it down. But it's not a new phenomena or a concept. It's absolutely not a new phenomena. What was our company in 1956 when they started? Or when there were refugees along millions of others, when somebody decided to put a line, a political line, and split the country into two or 2.5, and literally millions had to leave their homes, whatever they had, business, assets, and move across or migrate with literally nothing but the shirts on their backs. And that, as I'm sure all of you are aware, is the bloodiest migration mankind has ever seen on this planet. Till date, there is none which has been worse than that one. So these were people with something to prove to themselves, find ways to provide for their families, and had a sense of desperation. Maybe that was the reason that if you look across North India, a lot of the very successful businesses have been built by those who were actually migrants, who were refugees. And interestingly, this is not only an Indian phenomenon. This is a global phenomenon. When you lose something, you want to hold on either to the memory of that or create something bigger and better. For us today, if I look at where we are, we have over 10 million young people who get to the age where they can actually start productively to work. But if I look at what is the actual number of jobs that we are creating every year, it's sadly way behind. So the reason I said startups is not bad, in fact, startups are wonderful, because while we keep chasing government and large companies for jobs, both of them have a limitation. In fact, large companies, and this is again the world over, do not actually create a large number of jobs. They don't create on their own. They create an ecosystem, because their job is to create a brand, is to create design, is to create logistics, is to create ideas, and then create a value chain around themselves. A lot of it in mid-sized and small-sized enterprises who create the large number of jobs. The large enterprise themselves are constantly trying to bring in more automation, more robotics, higher efficiency, more productivity, and therefore often lower number of jobs. Not more number of jobs, but their attempt is to do more with less. But as I said, their overall ecosystem, of course, creates many, many jobs. I remember some years ago when we were putting up a new two-wheeler facility in Haridwar. I used to be then in charge. I'm no longer in that business now, but I used to be the joint MD of the company, and I was in charge of the project. When we met the Chief Minister of Uttarakhand, we showed him the number of people that would positively benefit only from that one company coming into Haridwar. That number was 235,000 individuals with just the one company. We were not going to employ them, by the way. But we took, I don't remember the exact number now, it was either 235 or 325 supply chain partners with us. And obviously, every one of them needed to hire people. They needed logistics, so trucks would come in. They needed documentation, so printers would come in, publishers would come in. So if you just look at the economic activity that gets created from one large value chain, which is why the cluster effect is a very powerful tool that's available. Now, whether you make it work productively through Jugaad or not, see, Jugaad is often abused. Jugaad has actually got us a long way from where we were. I can again give you our own example. When Hero Cycles was started, that was the first major company that our family set up. When it was started in Ludhiana, they didn't have any resources because they'd come with literally nothing. They'd only started trading before that. What they did provide was actually quite unusual in those days, was integrity to the point somebody made, and customer service. Customer service was almost completely unknown, because that was a time, that was an age where anything you produced would sell, because everything was in short supply. All goods and all services were almost always in short supply. And the licensing system of the government ensured that they remained in short supply. So the expertise that industry or industry houses built was, how do I get a license for a activity? And by the way, it didn't matter what activity. Any activity for which you got a license was a license to make money, because you also built the expertise to block anyone else getting a similar license. So it was interesting that when Jawaharlal Nehru, the then Prime Minister, and Manubhai Shah, the then Industry Minister, decided in their wisdom that all large enterprises can only be run by government, it is small and mid-sized businesses that will be run by private enterprise. So they started giving out licenses which were for small enterprises. So on one day, they issued 127 licenses for companies to make bicycles across India. literally on one day. So our company was one of those who got the license.
One of 127.
One of the 127, yes. So my father did something which people would have said it could be foolish. He went back to the government, said, we don't want this license. We want the license to make bicycles, but we do not want this condition in there of SME. SME meant a limitation to how much you can produce and how much you can sell. It didn't depend on your capability or your capacity, but just that you were limited by the license. You can only do so much per day. So I guess we can only thank the Almighty. We were lucky that we got a license with that condition removed. Otherwise, we may not have got the license, as would often happen with many people. And because they had been pushed by their customers, it was interesting. As bicycle parts traders, they would collect orders and then go and book the orders with dealers, come back and find suppliers, get those components and supply them to the dealers. So dealers told them that you are so efficient, you are so diligent, why don't you guys start making some of these components yourself? So they actually started making components. And they kept pushing them to do more. That's how the license for the bicycle came about. Because the then Chief Minister of Punjab, Mr. Pratap Singh Kairon, was a very dynamic individual. The closest I can imagine now is what Chandrababu Naidu is like amongst the current chief ministers, or what Mr. Modi was like when he was Gujarat chief minister. So there have been very few examples in the country where the chief ministers took the burden of actually transforming their own states.
Like a CEO.
Like a CEO, exactly. And by the way, when you talk to Chandrababu Naidu, he likes to be called the CEO of the state,
Yes.
not the chief minister of the
Correct.
state.
Yes.
And he says it quite openly. That was a startup, by the way, in the true, earnest sense of a startup. Only they had no large VC system. They had no mentors. They had no support system. So it was a startup in a much poorer ecosystem than we have today. We are actually very rich in what we offer to the startups. In the early days, one of the shortfalls used to be funding. Now that's no longer a shortcoming. For any good idea, you can get funding. In fact, excessive funding has also become a problem sometimes, because too many companies end up raising more than they need. Then they start misusing or abusing those funds, and then they trip and fall. Because we do know that all over the world, they say you're in great shape if 2 to 3 out of 10 startups do well. In India, sadly, we have a record of 1 in 10. I'm not sure how many of you in this room are aware. 90% of the startups will never see success post their starting off. In the very first year itself, anything between 20 to 30% will die. In the next 2 to 3 years, 50% will die. And beyond that, the balance will quietly fade away. So when we look at, one of the things we do as an organization is we have a very active investment office. So the criteria that we use to select the entities that we will invest in is, first, we invest behind people, never behind a spreadsheet, never ever. We don't even want to know how profitable that business is going to be unless we fully understood the people and the product or service and the business. Then we look at the numbers, because of the many hundreds of entities that we've dealt with, there is not one example of a company that's running a business today which was the plan that we saw before they started. Not one. So it tells you a little bit about how much startups truly understand of what the true business environment is like. So what we have chosen to do is to try and be responsible mentors to them. So we only invest behind people who demonstrate a very high degree of integrity, a good reputation, the ability to deal with other people. Because very often there are fantastic founders, great ideas, but they have no ability to grow because they don't know how to deal with other peoples. They cannot build teams. They cannot retain teams. We then look at if there is an existing need for that product or service, or it will meet an unmet need. Because very often you don't even know the need is there because the product or the service does not exist, but it could meet something, make somebody's life easier. The next criteria we have is to ensure that there is an outsized societal benefit. We do not only look for profit out of the investments we make, because there are many, many ways to make profit, and this is a very risky way to try and make profit. But if we can demonstrate an outsized benefit to society, that's another tick for us. After having looked at all of these is when we start looking at the business plan, and we almost never look for those which demonstrate that, by the way, I'm putting in money today, you will start getting returns because in 6 months I'm going to make profits. That is unrealistic. That is not real. That's not practical. Most often it's also not possible. So now going back to the Hero Cycle story, what did happen after they started itself in some way is almost magical. And I sometimes wonder what it was that trained them. Now I'm talking of our family elders, my father and his uncles. They're the ones, some of you knew them. They are the ones who started Hero Cycles together, 4 of the brothers. So they started doing 4 or 5 things, which actually allowed us then to go on and set up other businesses, get into mopeds, and finally get a partnership with Honda. Because when Honda chose our company as a partner, they had been approached by 140 companies from India for that partnership. The government of India had opened a window for a short while for global technology / partnerships for two-wheelers in India. Before that, it was not permitted. So obviously, there were many, many takers who went out, and Honda, being the leader in the world, got approached by many. And in the very efficient Japanese style, they would come in large groups with cameras. There were no smartphones or devices, and their diaries, they would come and make extensive notes in each trip. And every trip, they would reduce the number of companies they were meeting. The 20 companies, when they've shortlisted, they actually spent 2 years with them, visiting all of them. So when they picked our company, we actually asked them why they picked us. Because of the 20, we were actually the smallest company at that time. Because that list read like the who's who of Indian industry and business. All the large, big enterprises of India were on that list. So we said, you probably know more about us than we know ourselves by now, because you've done so much study. You've spoken to our bankers, our dealers, our suppliers, general customers, plus you've used all kinds of tools. And sure enough, they gave us some feedback. Some of the stuff, of course, we knew. Some we didn't. They said, we like the way you treat your people. We've not seen this anywhere in India. The only other place we've seen it is Japan. Because in our companies, attrition was 0. Anybody who joined the company would actually retire from there, and most often would not even retire because our family had been running foundational projects since a long time in education, healthcare, clean drinking water, gender issues, skilling, training, arts, culture, and a whole host of areas. So many of them would go on to take responsibilities in the foundations. And, our head of procurement was running some of our schools in Ludhiana. Our head of legal was running another school that we set up for children of industrial workers. So it created a lifetime engagement, not as an individual, but also as a family. And said, we like the way you treat people. We like the way you treat your suppliers. Because this was coming from the early days of Hero Cycles, was that because the company started with very little resource, all the suppliers were told that we are willing to help you set up a new unit because we don't have enough money. So we can't give you money, we can give you ideas, and we can tell you what component to make, how to make it, where to get equipment, etc. But We will not fund the business for you, and we will not run the business for you. So what it did was, it created a slew of entrepreneurs in Ludhiana, which, as we know, is literally the home of small business, one of the most active home of small business in the country. By the way, it makes the largest number of bicycle components in the world even today. From those few companies, it went on, and many of them have become world-scale companies, of course. And because the interesting thing then was, they found they could not make as many bicycles as they could sell. Because what had happened in British times was that value addition, even for bicycle parts, was taken away from India into the UK. So tires, hubs, rims, freewheels, chains, all of this used to get imported through agency houses into India, and would then be given in quotas and allocations. So if you got 1,000 rims, you could make 500 bicycles in the month, and that's it. You had no other option. That's how our family went around talking to family and friends, said, if you're interested, every business book will tell you should never do business with family. But our entire business is set up with family and friends only. And the other thing was, they had set up governance models which are today considered modern governance practices around the world. So arm's length pricing was being practiced. They told the family member or the friend that outside of this room, we are cousins or nephews or friends. Inside, we are business associates. So business will be done as business from day one. Plus, we don't have a lot of money. So please supply us only as much as we need every day, and we will pay you at the end of the week. So just in time was being practiced without knowing it was called just in time. Way before the term got coined, even by the Japanese, it was actually being practiced in Ludhiana at Hero Cycles. So every day, only that many components came in, which would get processed, assembled, manufactured, or shipped out. So that culture of maintaining tight inventory allowed us to do many, many things. It allowed us to run manufacturing businesses with a negative working capital cycle, which was almost unheard of in discrete manufacturing of this size and scale anywhere in the world. And it also allowed us to learn to manage current assets. Every Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock was the window outside Bhagatji's office. Bhagatji was the head of accounts at Hero Cycles. He was one of the early, actually probably was the first employee in the organization. He was a friend of my uncle's, and he joined the company to work. He used to come to office in a pajama, kurta pajama. Very conventional gentleman, but he was the most honest soul I've ever encountered in my life. I got a chance to train under him. So all of us, when we got into business, we had to intern and train in our companies or other companies for some time. So I was lucky I got to train in 5, 6, 7 different areas. One of them was with Bhagatji, who used to have 2 pens in his pocket always, and he always carried 2 pads. So I asked him, Bhagatji, why do you have 2 pads and 2 pens? He said, Kaka, eh pad mera hai, eh meri company da hai. Eh pen meri company deta hai, eh pen mera apna hai. Oberoi might know him, he's a long time worked with our companies. Agar mera apna kam hai, I will write with my pen on my pad. If it is company's work, I will write with the company's pen and on the company's pad. I have never in my life encountered another person who had that clear view of black and white. There was zero gray in his mind, zero. Everything was very clear. And so in that window, 2 o'clock, the checks of all the suppliers used to be kept. If you did not come by 5 o'clock, the check actually used to be mailed. It was very well known in Ludhiana by all the suppliers. If you're a supplier to Hero Cycle, you can issue a check on Monday because your check is definitely coming. So that set in place a culture of reliability, of dependability as a good partner, as a good entity to work with. So obviously we got fantastic terms from all the suppliers because they could manage their entire cash flow based on the payments from Hero Cycles. Now I'm giving you a very long answer to some of the questions. By the way, I'm trying to answer all the questions that you asked in the story. It will talk about both integrity and manufacturing and how and whys of it. Initially, when we started, there were no resources, so we kept a very tight ship in managing all of the resources. Over a period of time, the companies grew. We became large companies, we became globally largest companies, but we never changed the philosophy and the culture of work. To remain people-oriented, to build relationships and maintain them for long periods of time. I was addressing a dealers conference only a few weeks ago, and I was saying that our success lies in yours. If you're successful, you're automatically successful because you are the ones who meet the customer, you are the one who sells the products or the services. And you have worked with us for generations. Many of you here are second generation, some of you are even third. One young man, kept jumping up, putting up his hand. I said, is there something you'd like to say? He's saying, sir, I'm working fourth generation with your family now. So our concept of time is slightly different from many others. So it's not quarterly reports. It's not having to give an answer. What did you do this quarter? Why did it work or not work? So if you have the ability to think long term, you will take steps today which will give you the actual outcomes in the best interest of the company and the business. So we've restructured the group now twice over. We had 32 companies when we did the first restructuring. All the manufacturing companies that we had built, not one of them had a warehouse, not one, including the largest two-wheeler company in the world. There's no warehouses, neither for incoming goods nor for outgoing goods. So everything would come in every day. So that culture allowed us to do, this is what Honda had picked up on, and they actually pointed these out to us. So they said your productivity in your plants is at about the highest levels in the world. They said every time we come back, we have seen you have reinvented yourself. So one of the things we always try and do, first is to recognize that none of us in senior management, in the boards or any position has a monopoly on good ideas. They come from anywhere and everywhere. That is what our education must encourage. That's why skilling is important. That's why lateral thinking actually makes a difference. That's why learning by rote is a lousy education system, which is why the new education policy that India has put out is fantastic, but we've not gone around implementing it. We need a common set to implement it across the country. That can truly transform India, both the school education as also higher education. And education has got to be the foundation. When I'm saying education, I'm including all kinds. I'm including skilling, training, internships, experimentation, research, innovation. I'm calling all of that with a broad brush just education. It has to be best in class, and therefore it will be expensive. However, to make sure it's not expensive for individuals who come in, we have to ensure that you have endowments and you have provisions for both loans and support systems and scholarships and bursaries. That is essential. Those who can afford it must pay for it. Those who cannot must get the support. So we try and do this in our institutions, in our schools, in our colleges, even in DMC, the hospital that I chair in Ludhiana. We try and create systems where nobody gets refused. If anybody is deserving, they will get in automatically. But inside the hospital or the school or the college, nobody knows who's full fee paying, who's half, and who's free. So the treatment to everybody is exactly the same. But that system allows you to provide that quality of education to everybody, that quality of care to everybody. And I think that's what is important for us as a society. How do we build a just society, but focused on best in class always? So the two things we've tried to do, we've learned is, if you want to do something, you have to be world scale and world class, both. There was often an impression that scale is a problem. If you do scale, you cannot do quality. I'll give you a little bit of a story about even what we do in our foundations. So we run our foundation projects in the same way as we run our companies, exactly the same way. There's no difference. Same governance, same process, same quality of talent, and scale again. we run an multidisciplinary arts festival called the Serendipity Arts Festival. Are any of you in the room aware of the Serendipity Arts Festival? Okay, I'm a little bit surprised that only a few people have raised their hand. This has become the largest multidisciplinary arts festival in Asia and is probably one of the largest in the world now. And it is only 11 years old. This will be our 11th year this year. Last year was the 10th year. We had 268 projects and 800 performances in over 1,000 events in a 10-day festival in Goa. We now get visitors from 65 or 70 countries. We have artists from over 30 countries. We have a daily footfall of 100,000. And we had over 60 of the world's top arts and culture institutions come to attend. When we were starting off, I spoke to a number of my friends to say, this is what we want to do. Because I've been interested in the arts for a long time. But I think we need to reach out and make it accessible and available to others. It is becoming too much of an exclusive thing rather than inclusive. Also, we've got this false partition in our art form, which is not the Indian way of the arts. We've also created this high art and low art distinction, where people want to see the high art and low art is getting left behind. So we want to change all of these. So our festival has no fee, no charge. It's free for anybody to access. And we will show the most celebrated artists in the world alongside artists that you've never heard from or never seen. Experimental arts, traditional arts, as much as modern art, as much as contemporary art, all of them together in all art forms, visual arts, performing arts, and culinary arts all together. So when we were starting, my friends said, you know, in India, you have to be careful with size and scale. Start slowly, start with 2 projects. I said, okay, thank you very much. We started with 52 projects in year 1. In year 2, we had 74 projects. In year 3, we had 95 projects. Then we had 112 projects. And last year, I told you what happened. My belief is scale is actually magical. Scale gives you the ability to do things you cannot otherwise do. It's not the other way around. It is strength. It is power. It is ability. It is capacity and capability. So going back to our own recognition of our own limitations, we said none of us will ever have the ability to bring all good ideas to the table. So let's do 2 things. So we've partnered extensively with others. So the partnership with Honda, of course, got celebrated, got well known, but we've done over 100 partnerships by now across the globe, Far East, across the West, Middle East, Europe, also in India. Because not too many Indian companies do partnerships with Indian companies. So we tried to do that as well. And at the same time, what we did was we encouraged people within our companies to constantly experiment, to try and do things better. That is what Honda had noted. They said, you are reinventing yourself constantly, because that's a conscious effort to always try and do better. And when you try and do better, you will experiment. And by the way, when you experiment, all of it will not going to work. You will trip, you will fall, you will fail. And we, in our town halls, when we call up people and celebrate those who've done something special, in the same town hall, we call up those people who tried but failed and give them the exact same recognition. Because the recognition is not for the outcome, it is for the attempt that you make. If you make an honest attempt, you have no idea before you start whether it's going to work or not. It's a moonshot every time. So if it works, fantastic, people get recognized. If it doesn't, you often get put down. Failure in India has been a black mark in people's lives. So I think one of the things that is necessary for a startup ecosystem to be successful is essential to recognize and celebrate failure. If you go to California, which is the hotbed of innovation in the world, especially if you go to Silicon Valley, why do you think it succeeded? One, because it allowed the entire cluster effect, the entire ecosystem to get built there. Stanford as a university was there, which allowed and encouraged multidisciplinarity. Research was already happening. Actual innovation was going on. The application was happening on the ground and failure was allowed. So if you're a new startup, when you go to California, you may or may not get funding. But if you had 2 failures, you're guaranteed funding. Because the view is, you already know what not to do. So your likelihood of success is dramatically higher already. So just look at the approach. Whereas we have, I think, the wrong end of the stick here. I do see a change, not enough though. So for us to develop clusters like the Tri-City, like Chandigarh, like Ludhiana, like Jalandhar, like Raikot, like Jaipur, you have, possibility of hundreds of clusters, not just one. We have to allow ourselves the luxury of failure. We have to allow ourselves to distinguish people and their action. Too often, when you don't like something that the person has done, you start not liking the person. Frankly, these are 2 completely different things. So if you allow yourself that luxury, and it is a luxury, by the way, because sadly it's not practiced often enough, you actually benefit yourself because you're able to get the best from every individual that you meet. Literally, every individual you meet in your life, you will find the good in them. Because all of us are multifaceted. Even as individuals, as relationships, I'm somebody's brother, somebody's son, somebody's father, somebody's nephew, somebody's cousin. So I'm many different people already. When I talk to that individual, that is the face I put up. That is my communication. That's even my language. Like today's phones are the cameras in phones are very, very, very popular. Anytime the camera comes out, a phone comes out, all of us put on what is called a photo face. We all have our own photo face, by the way. You try and look at the last 30 pictures of yours, and you will see what I'm talking about. So what we are saying is, keep an open mind. Allow experimentation to take place. Allow, therefore, innovation to take place. You don't know it's not going to work. So don't draw these stiff guardrails. Have guardrails because you don't want things going wild. But have guardrails which are loose and sensible. It's like the conversation that's going on around AI right now. For us right now, we have a big advantage over many parts of the world. We have a country which has lots of young people, which is a plus and a minus. We also have lots of elderly people. It's not often recognized. In the next 8 years, we will have the largest number of people over the age of 60 in any country on the planet. So the demographic dividend is not going to come only from the young. You also have wisdom. You have experience. And there is absolutely no substitute for that, not even experimentation. So we need to learn to use that wisdom wisely, sensibly, in a way that is value accretive. The relationship, what works, what doesn't work, the cultural ethos, the philosophy of a good society, all of these are necessary. Why Jugaad is and can remain a part of a formal system as well, without being only disruptive. How do you use AI as a tool and not get driven over, not get bowled over by it? And by the way, AI is going to impact us. It's going to impact every aspect of our life, whether we like it or not. So the smart and sensible thing is to try and be proactive, see how it can be used. The only issue I have for countries like India is that don't only focus on where you can reduce people. See where you can improve the top line, where you can improve the productivity, where you can get more out of the same number of people, rather than trying to squeeze the number of people only, because that is our biggest challenge today. As a nation, our single biggest challenge is the poverty that we have as a nation. And that poverty is coming from the mathematics that you can do, and you can do it in many ways. I'll tell you the one simple maths. Manufacturing is only providing 12 to 15% of the GDP. Agriculture is providing even less and is continuing to drop all the time. Services has been the backbone of the economy, has grown, has done a fantastic job, but cannot hold up everything on its own. The numbers keep shifting now. 63 to 65% of India lives in rural India. 45% depend on agriculture as a primary source of income. Agriculture is not providing 45% of its GDP. So directly, you're actually creating poverty in rural India. So for India to develop, all of India has to develop, especially and particularly rural India. So it is important, therefore, as we grow productivity, you will need less people on the farms. You will need a parallel non-farm economy. You will need a parallel post-harvest economy. Both at this moment are minuscule. They're almost nothing to speak of, but both have an immense possibility. Let me throw out an idea for those of you who are interested in new ideas. If you think back to just a few hundred years, India, in its recorded history, that India had 26% world trade, 23% world GDP. I'm sure all of you have heard these numbers. There are a few variants of these which get bandied about, but this is what I have read in actual documentation. If it was 26% world trade, what is it we were trading? Other than spices, because spices was a big part, but that was not the only part. It was our silks, our jewelry, our handicrafts, our woodwork, our jali, our ivory, our bell metals. I can go down this list. There are over 1,000 items of handicrafts that India was producing and supplying to India and supplying to the best in the world. Across the globe, you will still find Indian products, even today, which were supplied at that time. You will, of course, find them in museums, etc., but you will also find them in collectors. Now, that skill still lies, most of it is in rural India. Those people down the generations have been teaching every next generation that skill. There's no blue book, it's not documented, but it's verbally taught. When you teach people verbally, you also expect them to practice it. What happened was their connect with the markets got cut off. So they're making the same things today they were making 400 or 500 years ago. And you and I are not buying those products any longer. So there's no market for them. With the result that is shrinking, going down, and there is no livelihood. So when the youngster says, I want to go and become a sales girl, I want to go and join a call center, I want to go and join an IT services company, the parent says, Jao beta, there's no work here, please go. So it sets in motion a chain which has many, many components to it. First is the massive migration we are seeing from rural to urban India. Our urban infrastructure is not designed for the kind of population we already have, and there's more flooding in every day. If we can just get the ideas of what the new products are that the contemporary buyers are using and create that connect with the market for them, please imagine what you have lying in store for you. Potential to create 100 to 150 million sustainable economic opportunities. No 5 or 10 industries put together can do this. And this would be sustainable, by the way. This can continue down generations. So how can we become a manufacturing industry? By exactly what I said. Focusing on efficiency, productivity, consistency, quality, customer service. The basics is what has been the challenge. The basics have been missing very often. We're trying to get in and make quick money. Only on the basis of valuation, you cannot build a long-term business. The business has to develop the long-term valuation. The product or service has to meet the need which I was talking about earlier, which is why even our investment office does not fund projects or companies who said, I have a great idea. The more I grow, the more money I will lose, the more money I will raise, and more my valuation will be. That model we neither understand nor fund. But if you say, I'm not making money today, this is my plan, 2 years from today, 3 years from today, this is how I will get there, and I'll keep growing beyond that. That's fantastic. So manufacturing has to understand, like anything else, all products, because of technology, because of communication, because of much more open communication with the world, will have to be world class. Every product has to be competitive, both in price as also in its quality and consistency and who it addresses. Therefore, the ability to understand customers in the depth and the diverse needs of different customers is an essential requirement. And manufacturing for us is an essential growth area. We cannot but grow this. So it's not for no reason that many governments in India now, this is the 5th or the 6th government that I've heard saying we need to grow manufacturing. Now, for the first time, we are actually not, I shouldn't say for the first time, but now we are doing some significant, serious stuff to actually grow manufacturing. The world's largest manufacturing sector is electronic hardware. And we are putting in a full value chain, starting from designs to OSAT, to fab facilities, to packaging, to all of them, and then downstream. Now, we do know that almost any activity in the world today requires silicon wafers and semiconductors. So the smart thing is to do it ourselves, is to build that capability. Defense requires it. Everything requires. Your toothbrush today has the electric toothbrush has a chip in it. Every car will come to a stop. As we saw happening a couple of years ago, there was a shortage of chips. So the car production went down. So for us, it is essential that we understand quality should not have to be asked for. It has to be inherent and inbuilt into everything that we do. Therefore, our integrity becomes important. Honesty, how you behave when nobody's looking, that is the real test. Not how you behave in front of a room full of people, but what do you do when no one is watching? That is the real test. So if we can be honest to ourselves, you will automatically be honest to the world. And we are natural adopters of technology. We have done it for the world. It is about time we also do it for ourselves. And we can do it quite quickly, as we have seen in a few cases of banking, of telecom, of insurance. We've seen how quickly you can transform. The pharma industry has shown us what capabilities India has. But even there, we have been scared of the long research cycle. Now, there are AI models. We are funding companies which are using AI to cut short the research and development cycle, in some cases by 30 to 40%. I just saw a report yesterday which says it will be possible to cut it down by 90%. Now, that is true use of AI. That is phenomenal. You want to do things which truly benefit society and are available for leisure, for pleasure, for aid, for help, for support of the elderly. Look at the opportunity we have. We are saying we have a large elderly population. We have no product or service available for them today, not one. You don't make chairs for them. The chair height is required to be 2 inches higher than a standard stool. The toilet seat is supposed to be different height, as you will know very well. So clothes are required to be different. The handle of the knife and forks are required to be different. So if we start applying our mind, you will find there is opportunity all around us right now. We are sitting in the thick of it. We have an enormous opportunity. Plus, please remember, every time you create one manufacturing job, you create 3 to 5 manufacturing-related services jobs. That is also not often understood. The multiplier effect is enormous. So we need to support those industries which have a large multiplier on the economy. We need to support those industries where India can become a leader. And we also need to provide support those which are lagging and have large manpower requirements. So for us, the answers are actually pretty blindingly clear. I don't think there's any mystery for what is required. We therefore need to tap into our own brain power. It is enormous. If we can just channel it a little bit more productively, the opportunity in front of us is so large, it will be difficult for us that once you get that momentum of growth, our big challenge, as I said, of poverty can be met using technology, using systems, and using now a wealth of experience that we have. And once you get over that, your growth then tends to multiply. We are already at that point where the per capita income grows like a hockey stick. So gatherings such as this are important to see how do you create a cluster effect here. So we do multiple things here, by the way. I am, as you might know, one of the founders of ISB. We also run, one of our companies runs some real estate projects here. We run a hospital in Ludhiana, multiple schools and colleges, etc. other than, of course, our factories and companies and other operations. So you have a unique advantage as a geography, as an intellectual capital, and also as a physical architectural marvel. You have been a leader for the country. Go out and demonstrate it to the world. Go out and show people what an amazing architecture can do, how you can build a city which 50 years later still looks like one of the better cities in the country. So good luck to all of you, and congratulations on setting up this conversation. Thank you.
Thank
Forbes India Leadership Awards 2026 Leadership Circuit, presented by Federal Bank.